Hey guys, before we get into this, let's go ahead and set some ground rules. First, this is a look at the canon and writing of Janeway, specifically for this episode. I love Kate Mulgrew, and Janeway isn't always this bad. So this is more a microcosm of the character. And yes, I know in the background they went back and forth on how to write Janeway, and how to end the episode. It's not my fault that Voyager Star Trek writers seem to be so, inconsistent. Second, if you're about to tell me how bad Ransom is or how bad another captain was, then know that I don't really listen to the tu quo que fallacy all that often. Just because someone else did something bad, or even worse, does not justify what Janeway did. And for the record, Sisko should be put in a maximum prison jail cell for the rest of his life for what he did in For the Uniform. Third, the canon is what the canon is, despite any outside influence. It's like I always say, though the show shows what it shows, do not blame me. Fourth, for those looking for a breakdown of the actual episode, I would suggest Lore Runner or SF Debris. They are very well done videos. This is going to be a brief breakdown of Voyager, Equinox, the captains, and then the battle breakdown. If someone wants me to do a breakdown of the actual controversies of the crew, I may at a later point. With that out of the way, let's just get into it. To understand the battle between the Equinox and Voyager, you have to first understand the point of view of both captains. Now, if I was to create a Venn diagram between the captain of Voyager and the captain of Equinox, the things they would have in common would be that both were brought across the galaxy into the Delta Quadrant, both had to deal with constant power issues and hostile aliens, but from there, whereas Voyager was able to rebuild every time and had all of the creature comforts that they had at home, Equinox did not and was constantly foraging. The one thing I will say is that I do feel that both Ransom and Janeway had similar mental stresses and reacted very similarly in that manner. What they had to do, what they felt they had to do, what needed to be done, and the fears of what they would have to do would tear down anyone emotionally and mentally. So it's not that there isn't justification for either of them. With that in mind, let's take a look at the individual situations. The Equinox would endure several attacks from different species, losing over half of her crew in one of the initial first contacts. The ship, designed for short-term situations, would not be able to sustain normal operations. Interestingly, this episode infers that the Intrepid was indeed meant for longer duration trips, given that the Nova class was definitively not. And of course, Voyager, while still having to deal with things, and with the exception of Year of Hell, which had a reset button, would go through similar situations, but always come out on top and always have a ship that was somehow magically repaired. And now moving on to the captains and their justifications, when it was discovered that Ransom was committing mass murder to get his people home, he was crucified for it, even though he was able to justify his actions by quoting regulations. Note, this is something Janeway did not only in this episode when she wanted to get what she wanted, but she's done it in many. She has justified all kinds of atrocities using either the Prime Directive or using regulations. And before we get into an argument on whether the regulation would allow Ransom to do what he did or not, it ultimately doesn't matter what you, what I, or what Janeway thinks. It would be at the discretion of Starfleet Command to judge him. Janeway was acting way out of her authority on this, especially if Ransom would have agreed to stop and work with the Voyager crew to find another way home. If Ransom had said, you know what, you're right, we're not going to do that anymore, then what he had done in the past was something that Starfleet Command would have had to figure out. Now that said, I honestly don't mind Janeway's disgust or indignation. I even don't mind her attempting to relieve him of command as a knee-jerk reaction. However, Captain Ransom begs for his crew. He asks for leniency. They were only following his commands after all. And her response? She says that it was their mistake. Do not be mistaken. She had a chance to prevent everything that was about to happen. Now, it's possible that Ransom would have still went through with this, that he would have still attempted to escape and leave Voyager screwed over. But I find that unlikely. And let's not forget that every time we see this situation in other iterations, whether it's the JJ-verse, Wrath of Khan, and others, the captain who begs for his crew is the good guy. and the person who denies it, the bad guy. Am I saying that she would be responsible for those who die after this? No. But she certainly gave some justification for why the Equinox crew would attempt to escape. Also, when the Equinox not only steals Voyager's tech, but leaves them to fight off the alien creatures, they were in the wrong. Ransom, after seeing what Voyager had went through, should have turned around and attempted to help. Neither Janeway nor Ransom are in the right on this. And you know what ultimately pisses me off? After all of this grandstanding on both sides, after people are dead at the end of this damn episode, ultimately Janeway gives the crew what Ransom requested. All of it was a waste, if both had just agreed beforehand. The only other point I'll bring up before the battle breakdown is that of Janeway's actions when it comes to catching Ransom. She was willing to kill a member of the Equinox to get information from him. And when Chakotay stepped in to stop murder, he was removed from command. Honestly, here are 2 points to this. Here's something to look at. First, Janeway had fallen to Ransom's level. She was, for all intents and purposes, as bad as him. She was willing to kill to catch him. It wasn't about anyone else. Ransom, I honestly believe, wanted to get his crew home and was willing to do whatever it took. And Janeway would ultimately do the same thing too when she went back in time and erased people from history. They're both the same in this. Secondly, Chakotay is an abject failure as an XO. Janeway was compromised. She should have been removed from command. The fact that he didn't remove her from command is a dereliction of his duty. And let's not even talk about how Janeway agreed to have the entirety of the Equinox and her crew killed by the aliens so that the aliens would stop attacking Voyager, and how Tuvok did nothing. And before anyone goes to defend Janeway using real-world pragmatism, remember this is Starfleet. If you are a Starfleet officer, you are held to a degree that is unreasonable by today's standards. And if you say that she was just getting too much thrown at her, that she was acting human, then congratulations, you just invalidated her reasons for going after Ransom. So with both captains reasonably damaged, one arguably worse than the other, we get to the battle of the Equinox and Voyager. One thing before I break down the battle itself, it's important to know that out of the gate, the Intrepid class is much more powerful than the Nova class, and that's just on spec. A brand new Nova versus a brand new Intrepid would result in a solid victory for the Intrepid class. I mean, it's not even close when you compare them. Now, I have heard people argue that the battle went longer because the Intrepid was attempting to disable, to hold back, and not destroy it. I find this dubious. There's really no good reason that Voyager, especially modified with Borg enhancements, shouldn't have been able to trounce the Equinox, even when it pulls its punches. And the Equinox was doing the same. I mean, Ransom didn't want to destroy Voyager. But we'll just have to assume that there were conditions that we didn't know about that made it harder for Voyager to succeed. Before the battle, the one thing I will give kudos to Janeway about is her understanding of Ransom. After doing research on him, she identifies his tactics. She finds out that when he's in a rough position and his ship is damaged, he'll attempt to hide and utilize anomalies and planets to mask his location. Using this information, she would be able to easily find the Equinox. Voyager wasn't only able to identify where the ship was, but also polarized its hull so that the Equinox wouldn't pick up Voyager herself. From the dialogue, it's likely that Voyager had been tracking the Equinox for quite a few hours even. The Equinox away team on the planet would be captured. You know, the away team that was attempting to mine ore deposits of deuterium. No, don't beep it. It's in the dialogue. They were actually trying to find deuterium ore. I mean, it's really just symptomatic about how much the writers of Voyager didn't really give a damn. Unfortunately, a spy aboard Voyager would advise the Equinox that Voyager was onto them, allowing the Equinox to prepare to fight. Voyager would strike the first blow, firing phasers and targeting the power core. As discussed, Voyager was attempting to disable the Equinox. I truly believe that the Equinox was doing the same to Voyager. Janeway wanted to stop the Equinox dead in the water. Ransom wanted to disable the shields of Voyager so that Voyager would have to deal with the aliens. Voyager would be successful in disabling the Nova-class ship's weapons, and Ransom would take the Nova into the atmosphere. Voyager would follow. Unfortunately, Voyager would not be able to stay in the atmosphere because the shields of the Intrepid class wouldn't be able to take the stresses of atmospheric flight. Except, the Intrepid was designed to land, and for atmospheric conditions. Also, I found no alpha cannon that supports the Nova class being able or designed to go into the atmosphere. In fact, the evidence I find shows the opposite. So what the f***? So yeah, because of the danger Voyager was in, it would disengage. The heavily damaged and not made for atmosphere Nova class would stay only a little bit longer than the Intrepid class. Ultimately, the Nova class would pull out as well, leaving orbit and enter into warp. Voyager would not be able to follow given that the ship was unable to enter into warp at that time. Main systems were still down. Which makes you wonder how they found the Equinox anyway. Didn't it enter into warp and found this planet? So wouldn't they have had to gone to warp to get to the... You know what, never mind. I'm not even going to do a clip. Just continue on. With the Equinox unable to utilize the warp drive of specialness that requires dead aliens to power it, Voyager would ultimately fix her systems and be able to catch up to the Nova-class ship. After having a change of heart, Captain Ransom would order his crew to stand down. He wanted to surrender to Voyager. Unfortunately, Executive Officer Maxwell Burke would not be willing to surrender and would successfully instigate a coup against the captain. With Burke in command, the Equinox would fire on Voyager, causing minimal damage. The Intrepid-class vessel would fire back on the ship. And again, the Equinox would be outmatched, and, at least according to Harry, Voyager would be able to cause damage to the port nacelle. Now, I mean, Harry called it damage, I would call it completely destroyed. Generally, that's what happens when the nacelle explodes, but, you know, I mean, whatever. The Equinox would drop out of warp, as would Voyager following close behind. The spy on board Voyager would be able to transmit the shield frequencies of Voyager to the Equinox. Because you know, Voyager wouldn't be monitoring any outcoming or ingoing communications, that would just be silly. With the shield frequencies, the Equinox would drop to a quarter impulse and fire a photon torpedo, completely bypassing the shields and doing substantial damage to Voyager. Janeway would order that the ship should fall back and attempt to escape, but the Equinox would follow close behind. The roles would be reversed as the Equinox would continue to fire upon Voyager, just pounding on the ship. Though, Voyager could have easily gone to warp to get away, but never did. Quantum? Luckily for Voyager, Ransom would still have friends within the crew on his side. He would contact Janeway and transport most of the Equinox crew over to Voyager, even though both ships still had their shields up, and he only disabled shields after everyone was beamed aboard. I mean, even I'm getting tired of my... The spy aboard Voyager, which, by the way, was the Equinox's EMH, would be deleted by the Voyager's EMH, who was able to return to the ship. Shield frequencies would stop being transmitted to the Equinox, leveling the playing ground once again. At this point, Ransom would disable shields around everywhere but his location and the bridge, allowing the aliens to attack all vital systems of the Nova-class vessel. This would force Maxwell and the rest of the rogue crew to attempt an escape in a shuttle. Unfortunately, they wouldn't make it. Ransom would decline to be transported, stating that he wouldn't have enough time to escape, and then would navigate the ship away from Voyager. He would then have an extraordinary amount of time, so he would connect some tech to his neck, so that he would be able to watch the beach as everything exploded around him. And at the end, as I stated before, Janeway would tell the crew that when they started off they wouldn't be trusted, but ultimately they would be able to become a part of her crew, and they'd be given the same rights as anyone else. Which she could have done without the deaths, had she simply given Ransom his request at the beginning for leniency. So yeah. Guys, I want to thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded. Thank you so much for watching this video. This is actually the YouTube cut. If you'd like to see the Lore Reloaded Producer's Cut, which includes actual clips of the shows with more videos to help with context, consider becoming a patron for as low as $1 a month. Not only is there more content for you to see, but patrons get to see these videos a full 2 days in advance. If you're interested in seeing it but don't want to become a patron, then head over to lorereloaded.com. The Lore Reloaded Producer's Cut will be uploaded a full day in advance before coming on YouTube. Lore Reloaded is completely fan-funded and relies on viewers like you. Thank you so much for your consideration.